Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to view Quantum Leap Season 1, Episode 16, titled Ben Interrupted. So, we come to find that the title of this episode is to have been taken from a movie called Girl Interrupted, which of course has some kind of similar, mental hospital story and so on and so forth. To me, I was to, of course, go on and to have watched this episode, and for some goofy reason, I kept being reminded of the Michael Douglas, Brittany Murphy movie, Don't Say a Word. And so, with that said, we come to find that Ben has leapt into 1954, as he is to be, of course, Liam O'Connor. We come to find that Ben is to be a person who is to be a private investigator, instead of just being him instead of him just being admitted to this mental hospital. We come to find that Ben is to be trying to seek out this other patient, who is Judith, to try to get her out of this mental hospital. And so it kind of becomes this kind of prison break kind of episode, and I thought that it was rather good. Definitely a thumbs up. It was a great episode. Really enjoyed it. We would actually have both Janice and Martinez both involved in this episode, and of course, if you have to add certain characters in, you also had to subtract. We come to find out that Jen was to have been written off of this episode, and they just state that Jen was sick. At least they said something, because Ian was not have written out in prior episodes, so at least they said something about Jen. So good on them. I did like a little bit of that kind of character stuff that they were doing with the whole with the whole hot chocolate magic thing, where we come to find that hot chocolate is to be a comfort thing for magic for this episode. I liked it. It was a goofy thing, but at least they're kind of doing more character stuff that doesn't have to be like this emotional, drawn out thing that I kind of was to be like, oh, okay, like I get its backstory, but like I would like for them to do a lot more simple stuff than these like long, drawn out, emotional kind of things. For us to get to know certain characters. And I also don't like that it seems that every episode we have to get like these emotional things where it's like, please no, Ben. Like, come on. Like, there's certain times where I just feel that like those things come off as like so forced, and they just look weird. In all honesty. But yeah, so anyways, but I get it. Like, you have to get that emotion out, but it just comes off as like, I'm just like, okay, whatever. It doesn't seem honest. It doesn't seem legit. Just like, hey, just pull back a little bit. You don't have to go on. Yeah. No. Anyways, so other than that, let's go on and let's just get into spoilers. I had taken a health hiatus for reasons, and so yeah. So recently, like if I were to have even gone on and watched these episodes, of which the time of which they came out, it was very difficult for me to go on and easily do the reviews. So with that said, let's go on and double fire this bad boy up, because it's about that time again to, of course, go into spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. Hopefully, I'm going to try to get everything as kind of where it was in the episode as humanly possible, but I'm going to just take my own path on this one also. So if it's not perfect, then it is what it is. So in the very beginning of this, we come to find that Ben is to be in a mental hospital, being admitted by his supposed wife, Mrs. O'Connor, who is actually to be this other woman who is trying to go on and get Ben admitted, so that way Mrs. O'Connor can go on and be reconnected with her missing sister Judith. So we have, of course, Dr. Mueller going on and asking Ben, like, well, hey, like, who is the president right now? And Ben goes on to be like, well, JFK, and Dr. Mueller's like, the senator? I bet he would like that. And so, like, that kind of tells us what time period this is, which is, of course, 1954. So Mueller goes on and is to ask, like, what Ben's name is, and it's like, oh, Mr. O'Connor, because he heard, of course, Mueller stating that. So yeah, so we come to find that Mueller is to need to give Mr. and Mrs. O'Connor some time because, of course, Miss O'Connor wants to speak with Liam in private, and Mueller grants that. Mueller walks away. We come to find out that I believe Elaine here is talking to Ben and stating what his real reason for being here is. And so I'm like, okay, there's this whole like private investigation that's really going on, and this girl is given Liam quite a bit of money to do this job here, and that for when Liam is to go on and do this case, like this girl's like, hey, I'm gonna get you this money. I'm gonna get you the money to do all this. So we come to find that Ben is going to need to find this girl's sister Judith, and so Ben is like, oh, okay, like this is my mission statement, at least I know what I'm here for, instead of just being this crazed person. So, or otherwise, if all Ben needed to do is become cured, then that would be just a really quick episode. And maybe we can go on and have like these rapid fire leaps that come out. Man, I'm sure that would just be like a huge, like, it was kind of interesting when Quantum Leap would just have these like really short like intro leaps, and then you would get to like these other leaps. And so I'm kind of waiting for that to possibly happen in like the later episodes. Probably not like this episode because they are spending probably a lot of money to do what they're doing now. But eventually, maybe in other seasons, maybe we'll have like these little brief little blips of leaping things where Ben is going to have to be like multiple like people in one episode, and that could probably get really confusing for not only Ben, but whatever reasoning Ben is going to be there within those leaps. But moving on, I'm also waiting for him to become that like rock star thing that we saw in like some other like promo package, and we never saw that in any number of these episodes. Like, he's looking into this mirror and he's like this rocker. When was that supposed to be a thing? Was that just the promo package and they weren't legit ever going to do that in this season? I don't know. Like, that kind of sucks that they don't go to whatever that story was. But moving on. So, Ben ends up being kind of brought in and kind of be told the lay of the land by a orderly named Lawrence, telling the rules about how if like he doesn't straighten up, that they'll have to do like bathroom duty, and if it gets worse, like there'll be other kind of punishments and whichever. So Ben goes on to make his way through this location, be given a schedule, and so Ben then goes on to, after Lawrence is done talking to him, we then have Ben, who is immediately scared by Addison. And so Addison goes on and is to get the information from Ben of why he's actually here. And so it seems that when Addison is looking this up, it seemed that Judith had never gone on to escape this hospital, and neither did Ben, his character Liam. So we come to find out that that is to be the main thing that they are going to try to go on and correct here. Addison goes on and tells Ben, like, oh, okay, well, I guess you'll go on and get some sleep then. And Ben's like, oh, yeah, sure, in a mental hospital. I'm sure it's going to be so easy. Because I had recently just gone on and seen, like, the butterfly effect. And we had the one character who was going on and stating, like, well, yeah, like, like in a mental hospital, like there's so many people screaming and all kinds of things. There's no way for you to sleep. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with sleeping, Ben. That's what I assumed. So we come to find that Addison is to be speaking with Ben, and Ben also realizes upon this wall there is this kind of like mapping thing, and this could be a possible way for them to try and escape. And so Ben is relaying that to Addison. It's like, well, yeah, like I think we'll have to go on and figure out an escape strategy for you. So, and I think she says that like the very next morning when Ben is just kind of like, man, I'm freaking out because this place is so creepy and weird. So we would go on to have Addison, who is talking to Ian and is trying to figure out an escape plan. And we come to find out that Ian had talked to Magic, and Magic had this this hot chocolate. I almost want to say like it's like coffee or some other kind of thing. That's why I probably messed it up earlier. So we have Addison talking to Ian, and it seems that Ian is doing double duty. He's doing security duty because, of course, Janet's not there. She's sick. And so they wrote her off. But hey, at least the effort was there. So somebody probably made fun of him about a prior episode. So we come to find that we have Addison who talks to Ian, and so Ian at some point is to mention about Dr. Mueller and how he had gone on and done quite a bit of experiments upon his patients, and a lot of times they would just kind of they would disappear or be ruled dead. And so yeah, so this doctor would just try to like willy-nilly do a bunch of like experiments to just kind of see what would happen. And so that would, of course, have us hope that like Ben could figure out a way to accelerate that so Mueller would stop hurting people by knowing that bit of information. So we also come to find that Janice is to have escaped from her ankle bracelet because I guess she was on house arrest. And so Magic is to eventually go on and make his way to seek out Janice, who, of course, is to be living with Beth Calavici. And we come to find out that when Magic is to go on and seek out Janice, Janice is like, well, hey, like, the information that I'm being given about what is going on in the project, like, it's far too delayed. Like, by the time that I get any information, like, it's ancient, and I don't even know where Ben is right now. And so Magic goes on and states to Jen that he is in 1954, and Janice is like, okay, good, because Janice ends up going on and eventually relaying to the team of that this is Ben's last chance to kind of throw the leap on purpose, and they all have to ask her why. Like, this doesn't seem like a rational thing to go on and do. And she goes on to explain it. So that happens kind of later on in the episode. But so we have maybe I'll go on and explain that now so I can get that out of the way. So, but we also have to realize that Ben and Leaper X at some point are going to work together, and I'll go on and explain that. So, but we have Janice who goes on, she makes it to the Quantum Leap headquarters, she goes on and explains that this is Ben's last chance to throw the leap, that Leaper X had gone on and been tied with Ben on every one of his leaps, and this is a leap where the two of them are going to have to be forced to be worked together, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so Janice says that Ben needs to throw this leap, that he needs to stay in this time period, and a lot of them are thinking like, can we really trust what Janice is telling us? Can we really go on and believe what she's saying here? So and it's also just kind of really fascinating to see like what would happen if Ben does throw a leap. Like, would he still go on and get like a next assessment of what he has to do to eventually go on and leap regardless? Or like, it's just kind of fascinating to see something like that play out, because we haven't had that kind of thing ever happen, I think, on the show before, where we always have like Sam or Ben always getting to the leap. We also had both Ian and Addison talking together, and Ian was stating like, well, hey, we finally had like archive information about evil leapers, which I was like, great. Like, they finally realized that there was some actual prior information from prior shows about the evil leapers. I'm like, man, that only took them, what, 16 episodes to... after it seems that Martinez was to be a thing. Like, man, these people are just so, like, late on the gun. How is it that these people, like, haven't really thoroughly had the knowledge of everything that happened prior into the Quantum Leap experiments? Could we just state that, like, all of this stuff had been held off by whoever the mole is by the end of this episode, and you can just easily blame that person? But so anyways, we go on to have Janice who's stating like, well, hey, we need to have Ben throw his leap so he can stay in his time period, so that way Ben can stop Leaper X. And that was to be the whole plan. That was the reason why Ben leaped, because he knew what was going on, and he knew that at some point that this would possibly lead to Ben trying to save Addison. So that's why Ben put this whole thing together. That's why he leapt. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. So that goes on and to technically explain why Ben had leapt instead of Addison, because he knew something that Addison didn't. And to be able to have saved Addison, and Addison, I guess, could not have gone on and just, I guess, saved herself. It is what it is. But so we go on to have Ben, who is to need to be in this certain kind of cafeteria-like place. And he is to go on and start kind of looking for a certain seat, and Lawrence is like, oh, like, are you looking for like a specific place to sit? It's like, well, like, it doesn't work out that way. Like, we have assigned seating here. So Ben is to be plopped down in a certain area to be given a thing of food, and we have Ralph, who's sitting next to Ben, telling him, it's like, well, hey, like, you probably shouldn't go on and eat the sausage. And Ben is like, I don't think I'm going to be eating anything at all. Yeah. So we come to find that Ralph, it seems, has been here for a very long time, and he kind of knows what's going on. So Ralph is kind of giving Ben the 411, and kind of also telling him about how the coffee probably tastes like a dish soap or whatever, but at least it's hot, something like that. So Ralph goes on to explain like how Ralph had a friend here, and at some point when they kind of were to get like so many strikes, like, this guy is now disappeared. So yeah, like, kind of relaying to Ben, it's like, well, hey, kind of just like, try not to tick too many people off here. So we go on to have Ben, who is to realize that he is to has seen Judith, and so he's like, oh, I have to go over there, I need to talk to her. So, because of course Addison is to show Ben a picture of what Judith looks like, and so Ben is like, oh, okay, so I know who I'm looking for. So Ben goes over to Judith, and while Ben is trying to talk to Judith, and Judith is kind of like gone. And so while Lawrence is starting to get a little ticked off because Ben is to move from his seat, we all of a sudden have Ralph, who is to start to chuck things and is to try to give Ben more time and to not get him into trouble. So Ben goes on and is to have Judith then like get back to her normal self and is to say like, hey, like what is your schedule? Like tell me what your schedule is. And so she looks at it and she's like, okay, we have like the same enrichment like place where they both can go into this library and talk together. So we then go on to have Magic go on and speak with Janice, and that's where we kind of get the whole part of that. We have Ben that is to go on and meet up with Judith, and we come to find out like Addison appears there and is to tell Ben, it's like, well, hey, like we have like the schematic for you, and because like Ian had gone on to kind of figure things out of how they can get out of there, and like Addison goes on and talks to Ben about how, like his poker face and how his poker face is really bad, and so Ian had gone on to figure things out about Dr. Mueller and also the escape way out. So we go on to have Ben, who is talking to Judith in the library, and bizarrely, Judith is to state that that she can't leap yet, and Ben is like, "What? Are you a leaper too?" No, Judith ends up explaining that she can't leap out of here yet because she needs to go on and help out all the other people. And Ben is like, well, like I can't like have everybody escape. Like not everybody's gonna get out of here. Like I need to concentrate on you, and then maybe afterwards, like we'll go on to like help the others. And Judith is like, well, like no one's gonna believe us. Like we had just come from a mental hospital, and nobody's gonna take our word for it. So we need to come to find a way to have like proof or evidence or something that Dr. Mueller is doing bad things to these people, and like the only way to do that is get Dr. Mueller's records. And so Ben is like, well, I think I can come up with a way to try to get to that, as well as like Ben is kind of just looking at Addison. It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to rely on you to figure that out. So we then go on and have both Ben and Judith, who are both in this painting class together, or this seemingly art teaching class. So we have Ben, who is stating that like Judith like is painting flowers and she actually should be painting something else. And Judith is like, well, I just missed the outside, I just missed flowers, and so I'm just painting that. And so Ben is like, oh, okay, like whatever, like calms you down. So we go on to, of course, have like Addison come in and is to tell Ben, it's like, well, hey, like we have everything prepared, and we are to also have like Addison figure out that Martinez is going to leap into here. So we have Ben that goes on and just starts to slap against this painting, which of course causes a chaotic like moment. And so Ben is to go on and have this art teacher be like, well, hey, like Ben, like you know that you'll get disciplined for doing this. And so Ben ends up relaying that Judith was to have made him go on and do this also. And so both of them end up going to the bathroom to eventually find that this ventilation is to lead to their secret way out. So we have Ben and Judith's like, well, hey, like, how did you know that there was this secret passage way here? And Ben is like, well, because I had a number of geniuses that were to all work on this, on a project prior uh, to us being here. And Judith is like, huh? And so Ben is like, no, I'm an investigator. Like, that's how I figured it out. And so Judith is like, oh, okay. So we have Ben going on and telling Judith that once they get out to this ventilation shaft, that like Judith needs to go on and call her sister so that way they can get out of here, and for them to kind of get to the easiest phone. So they go on to get through this shaft, and they make their way into Mr. Mueller's office to try to get the records. And so, or they go to this location to get these records. And so we then have Martinez, who is to eventually leap into Lawrence. So we go on to eventually have like Lawrence find both Ben and Judith first, and then Dr. Mueller comes in and is like, oh, hey, hi, yeah. So we realize that the jig is up, that we then forcibly have Judith being taken away to have some experiments being done on her. We had Martinez, who was to try and go on and was to try to take Judith to leave elsewhere, and the doctor is like, no, like, I want to hear that from Dr. Mueller. And so we had Martinez, who was to almost stab into this woman, but ends up getting stopped by Addison, who she was to go on and talk to Janice about them, like, throwing the leap and everything like that. And Janice is like, well, okay, like, if I can't go on and talk to Ben right now, maybe I can talk to Martinez, and we have to realize that we have to team up together. So Addison goes in and is to talk to Martinez. Like, well, hey, like, there's certain times where you just can't go on, and, like, from Addison's military training, that instead of having to, like, brute force everything, that instead that they need to come up with some, like, tactical, like, think tank, like, way to still get their mission done. Like, they say it in a different barrage of ways of which, but I'm trying to, like, just layman terms, just kind of just shorten it down. So, like, because Madison goes into this whole, like, monologue of things, and I don't want to talk about all that. So we then go on to have Dr. Mueller, that it's like, you know what, I want to find out a lot more about why, like, this guy is here. So we come to find that Ben is to be injected with this seemingly truth serum, and Ben ends up asking Addison, it's like, well, hey, what is this? And Addison goes on and tells Ben, it's like, well, yeah, you're going to be really chatty, like, try as much as possible to prevent yourself from doing that. And immediately once Dr. Mueller starts asking Ben questions, Ben starts to go on and uncontrollably starts to answer. And even to the point of him talking about Quantum Leap, his time travel experiment, and that he's there to stop Dr. Mueller. And then Ben looks at us and says, well, yeah, I guess I can understand what you mean by that, by being far too chatty. So Ben keeps going on and giving up so much information that Addison is like, for the love of God, Ben, like, don't say another word. Like, please just be quiet. And so Dr. Mueller is to go on and like, you know what, like, like, I want to go on an experiment on you, like, while you're awake. Like, this will be fascinating to, like, experiment to see, like, what could go wrong. Because Ben goes on and is to mention that he's here to stop Dr. Mueller, that this guy is to be a horrible person, and that Ben is there to stop him, and all this kind of stuff. And so Mueller's like, oh, okay, all right. Like, well, like, I'm going to just dissect you, buddy, while you're awake. So we're going to go on and get that all set up and put together. So next thing we end up going on, we have Lawrence that goes on and rescues both Judith and both Ben from the predicament. And Judith is still like, hey, this is Lawrence, we can't trust him. And Ben is like, no, we can trust him for the time being. Because Addison and Ben have kind of both kind of acknowledged that it's like, okay, like this is the enemy is my friend kind of scenario, and we got to work together to kind of get what we need to accomplish here. So, because Martinez has his own mission, his own goal. So, they go back into this ventilation place to make their way to this kind of sewer system for them to be able to go on and get to this flight of stairs. And we then realize that Judith is to be safely escaped. And then by the time that Martinez is talking to Ben as he's making his way up this ladder, we go on to have Martinez, who is to stab Ben in the neck, and Ben ends up falling because it's like, well, yeah, like Martinez got what he got out of this mission, but he was also to need to stop Ben. So Ben falls from this ladder, and so now Ben losing blood, and now we have all our behind the leaper characters like scrambling because they're like, oh my god, like Ben is going to die here. Like he will probably leap in a number of minutes, but like he's bleeding fairly rapidly. So like he will probably die before he can go on and leap. So we have Addison, and she is on the comms somewhat with Magic. And so Magic is going on and telling Addison that like, well, hey, like you need to go on and figure out a like survival strategy here. Like you need to kind of think tank of how Ben can still survive in the scenario of which that he is in. So we have Addison who's like, okay, I'll figure something out. So Addison then forces Ben to desperately climb this ladder to get out of this this sewer location, to then go on. And oh, they also had the records for to go on and get to Dr. Mueller, because what happened was, and I didn't cover this. So we had Ben, who was to give Martinez this straitjacket, and Ben had this needle on Martinez, and they confronted Dr. Mueller, and of course Mueller didn't know that the two of them were working together. So we then had like Lawrence. We then had, what was I saying, Lawrence? We had Ben who tosses Martinez in front of Mueller, and then Mueller ended up getting injected with what was supposed to be what Ben had on Martinez. So Martinez ends up taking off the straitjacket. They both run off to get to Judith. They escape, and so I had to cover that also. So Ben ends up getting up the ladder, he ends up getting to a car where he has to take this lighter and he has to burn it into his neck so he could stop the bleeding. That's kind of like the Rambo thing, where Rambo went on and was to take the gunpowder and like pour it on his wound and like light it on fire. Same kind of thing, to stop the bleeding. So we're also still realizing that Ben may still like die here, but conveniently Ben is to go on and see a number of people that are making their way out of this facility. So Addison goes and tells Ben to kind of honk the horn multiple times so that way these people can go on and get to see that this guy needs help. So we have Ben who then leaps then. And so right after that, we go on to have Magic and Janice who are talking. And so that's when we end up getting the update of how Judith was to eventually reunite with her sister, and everything seems to be working out. Liam had gone on to continue his living and being an investigator, and everything seems to work out that way. And Dr. Mueller had, of course, gone on and like lost his license and all that kind of stuff. So all that jazz from this episode. So the next thing, when Magic and Janice were talking together, Janice had to go on and break Magic's phone. And the reason why she had broken his phone was because his phone was connected to the Quantum Leap project. And so Janice had to go on and tell Magic that there is a mole amongst them, and for who we are to possibly think, well, maybe it's Ian because of that whole sketch thing, and maybe he's being honest or dishonest, and so on and so forth. We come to find out that none other than the big evil bad villain of this story is to actually be Ziggy itself. The AI is to be the villain. I'm like, well, how are you going to go on and just beat that? Like, what is it going to be, like Ultron? Are we have to, like, avenge or Age of Ultron this mother? I thought that was an interesting way to do a story here. But, like, rationally, I was like, what, you couldn't have gone on and have it to have been any number of these people? Instead, you have to blame the AI itself because it's a crappy AI anyways. So what are we going to have to do? Are we going to have to actually kill Ziggy to eventually do some other AI thing? And also, in all actuality, you can just blame the AI for everything of problems with this story anyways. I don't know. That just... I don't know how I feel about that. But anyways, I'm just going to write myself out of here because I know how long that this episode is. So my apologies for how long this took, but I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.